Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now podcast, where we help career and entrepreneurial women gain the tools to develop a success mindset, create winning strategies, build collaborative relationships, and take bold action towards creating impact and fulfillment in their lives and careers. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm on a mission to awaken and activate women and emerging leaders so they can tap into their innate leadership ability, elevate their influence, and create the impact they were destined to make. If you're ready to uplevel your confidence, courage, and influence, you've come to the right place. Join me weekly for insights, strategies, and resources to help you grow, develop, and embody the leader you were meant to be, so that you can make the impact you know you are called to make and establish the legacy you've always dreamed. The world eagerly awaits the emergence of your brilliance, impact, and influence. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of She Leads Now. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am super excited to be joining you this week. And so today is just going to be us. We're going to be chatting around what it takes to make the shift from entrepreneur to leader and CEO. Now, this is one of my favorite topics outside of networking and relationship marketing, of course. But I enjoy speaking around this transition for many different reasons. One, because personally, I had to go through this particular process and have supported other clients in going through really this transformation. And as I discuss it more in detail, you'll see why I'm using the word transformation, because it requires more than just the shift in the business. It requires a complete transformation of you and your identity and what you identify with and what you believe about you, about your business, about your vision. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to speak to this and speak to the layers around, the leader, the organization, and certainly the team that they build around to make that organization grow and be successful. So for most of us, when we first decided to start our business, we were a one-woman show. And I know I certainly was. And it took a lot to get the business off the ground in the beginning. Or maybe that's just me. But based on others that I know, that is their experience as well. You go from being the one delivering the service, you're creating the strategy, you're executing, you're, doing all the tasks, social media, all of the things, you're holding all the calls, the sales calls, the follow-ups. And, depending on the type of business you run or have set up, you may have found yourself doing that for a while. And it probably made sense, right? Because you were trying to keep expenses low and trying to create a profit to a certain extent. But as I'm sure most of us experienced, there comes a point where doing all of the things leads to burnout. And so the question is, what happens when you get to that place of burnout and you're working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week? What happens to all of those amazing ideas, right? That we have and we generate in our sleep, when we're showering, and all these other things. What happens to those? The truth is, we get to a place where we don't have the energy, we don't have the excitement, we don't have the time to actually execute on them. So that might be the time where, we decide to hire some help or even work with contractors. And, for most solopreneurs that I know, it starts with the VA or someone to handle social media, or VA covers admin tasks as well, or someone to do, graphic design or a website. And at the time, right, it seems like that will help you get more work done. But then you probably found yourself trying to manage a team on top of doing your own work. And so I can personally attest to that, bringing on virtual assistants who were outside of the country, who, were skilled in what they did, but they weren't skilled in doing it the way that I wanted to do it, or from the brand standard or my expectations. And so, when you bring on virtual assistants or contractors or whatever, it requires a great deal amount of time, especially in the beginning, to train, to develop, to, ensure that they can be you, replicate your work in essence. And so not only are you balancing the work that was already on your plate, so all of the client delivery, all of the sales, all of the marketing, but now you have this individual or team of individuals who need direction, who need support, and who need development. So most of us know how taxing that can be, at least in the short run, right? In the long run, it creates space, it creates time once they have a routine and they know what they need to do. But you go from being on the verge of burnout because you're doing all the things to now you're doing all of the things and you're training somebody. So at the end of the day, once we've gotten past that, for those of us who have gotten past that, amen. For those of you who are listening who may still be in that stage, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's temporary. To build and grow a sustainable business, you need help. We cannot remain solopreneurs forever. I mean, there are people who are successful in their own right in being consultants and maybe, specialists in certain environments, but they're not out there doing social media. They're not doing podcasts. They're not doing all of these things. They stick to, building their network and creating a referral based business that allows them to, be successful. But for those of us who have different aspirations, we need people. We need a team to help us be successful. But the truth is, just bringing in other people is not the end all be all of our responsibility as the leaders, as the visionaries, as the creators of this business and this entity. We need to not only just train and develop and motivate the individuals that we've brought in, but we need to really step away from or begin to step away from the day-to-day tasks, the day-to-day things that we had identified with when we were the solopreneur or the coach or, the consultant or whatever title we were referring to ourselves as. We need to slowly but surely start to shed some of the tasks that, again, we may have identified with, so that we can really embody and step into the identity and the role of the CEO. Some of you may be asking the question, well, what's the difference between a solopreneur and a CEO? So if you think about it this way, the solopreneur is responsible for the main deliverables of all aspects of the business. So that's what I was talking about. You are HR, you are finance, you are IT, you are service delivery, you are content marketing, you are all of the things, right? Soup to nuts, you're doing all of the things. And even if you have a VA, even if you have somebody supporting you, you're likely working side by side with them. The CEO, on the other hand, is the chief executive officer of the business. In a small business in particular, the CEO is in charge of the vision for the business, right? So they are the visionary, they are the creator, and they're the ones who say, I want to take this business here, wherever here is, and then they help to make a plan to get there. And so their role is to maintain the vision, right? And create the plan, create the strategy and all of the things. And then they bring in or they, leverage the collective resource of talent, of creativity, of others to actually put that plan into action and head towards whatever result that they've envisioned. While as a CEO, especially of a small business, you may still, be in a place where you're executing on the plan as well. The ultimate goal is to put the right people in the positions so that you can focus on the planning, the strategy, and the management rather than being the one doing. So it goes from, doer of all things, right, to visionary of all things, and supporting and creating space and providing resources for others to support you in creating that vision. And so my experience with this, because it has been a journey, It absolutely has been a journey, which is ironic because I help support so many others through this process. But when it's you, it's a little different. So back in 2021, I found myself at this very place or these various stages that I've shared with you where I was doing all of the things. I had help, I had support, I was working in partnership with other people, and it just felt overwhelming. And so I made the decision at that point that I wanted to move away from being the doer of all things and even the, main executor of all things to getting clarity on the strategy. Because here's what I learned as the leader. If you are in the trenches with your team and your staff, I'm a firm believer as leading by example. I'm a firm believer of rolling up your sleeves to get things done. But at the end of the day, if you're in the trenches all of the time with your team, who's leading? Who's carrying the vision? When we're in the trenches and we're deep in stuff, right? Someone needs to be on the lookout. Someone needs to be on higher ground to be able to anticipate challenges, to be able to anticipate, issues or obstacles or even opportunities. But when you're in the weeds with your team, no one's leading. No one's leading anyone. And you are at the mercy of whatever's happening ahead. So I think that that's the important thing. It's not to say anything bad about anyone who has to kind of be, all in, sleeves rolled and doing the work. Just know that it's going to get to a place in time where you have to step up as the leader to say, wait a minute, I got to look up for a little while just so I could see what's ahead, just so I can plan. And then if needed, I'll come back and work alongside with you. So going back to my example, that's where I was. I was in the trenches. And as the year was coming to a close, I found myself in this place where I was just like, I don't even have the mental capacity to think about Q1 of 2022 right now. And that was when it hit me that, oh my gosh, this is a dangerous place to be as a leader. This is a dangerous place to be as a business owner who has responsibility for, my livelihood as well as the livelihood of other individuals. And so that's where I began to put things in place so that one, I could create more space and more ownership for those who are supporting me, and drew the line, if you will, on what was my responsibility versus what was their responsibility. And it's still a work in progress, but the more that I've maintained this space and maintain this identity, and literally I have to remind myself every now and then, is this the work of a CEO right now, or is this a work of an employee? And that's my personal internal check of, okay, Sabine, this is something you can delegate. It's delegatable. Just made that word up, versus feeling like, oh my gosh, let me go. I have 10 minutes. Let me go ahead and do this. So that's been my personal journey. And with regards to, my clients in startups, the same thing happens, right? You're in a startup. It's all hands on deck. Everyone's working on getting the stuff done. And then next thing you know, here you have this team of 10 people or this team of 15 people who are looking for development, who are looking for guidance, who are looking for leadership. And so really unwinding or undoing some of that doer mentality that we have in the beginning, to step back and realize that my role has shifted. And my responsibility here is no longer to be the doer, but to serve those who are doing, in the capacity of leading them, in the capacity of providing guidance, in the capacity of developing and mentoring them so that they can be the next best version of themselves. So if you're at a point where you just don't feel like your business is sustainable because you're doing all of the things and you're doing it by yourself, I want to share a few ways that you can make that shift from solopreneur to CEO. It's not an overnight shift because it literally is a transformation in so many different ways. But it's possible because obviously we've seen other CEOs who are successful and they've done it. So, first and foremost, you have to genuinely want to grow a business that can run for the most part without you. I know that sounds like we all want that, but the reality is it's not true. Ask yourself, what are your ultimate goals for this business? Do you see yourself being the one working with clients or packaging products? Or do you see yourself meeting deadlines and managing the bookkeeping? Do you see yourself planning out big projects, paying close attention to the market, making changes that help keep your business growing? Do you want to find people you trust to move projects forward? Either one of these is okay. You can be a solopreneur or a CEO, but the truth is, you cannot be both. So I would invite you to really dig in and ask yourself, what is it that you want for your business? Many of us start our businesses because, we feel this tug inside, right, to help and to make an impact. Some of us see a need in the marketplace and we're driven to create that solution. Some of us have always been around entrepreneurs. And so the natural thing is to use our skills and our talents to start a business, regardless of why you started it. Use this time and this opportunity in this space to really think through, what do I want from this? What do I want my role to be? Back when we were in corporate America, right, most of us had a particular career track. And so for me, for 10 years of my career, I knew where I wanted to be. And every position that I took on, or every role that I took, or every project was to help give me the skills or give me the experience that I needed to get to whatever that end goal role was. And so I would invite you to think of your business in that same space. What is the end goal here? What do I want to be doing 10, 15, 20 years from now? What do I want my role? What parts of my business do I enjoy doing the most? Next is identify your zone of genius. So while this sounds simple, this is, for whatever reason, hard for many of us, because no one tells you when you start a business that you are going to have to learn 100 different roles and be able to do 100 different roles at the drop of a dime. And for some of us, what happens is, as we've learned to do these different roles, we've taken courses, we've, downloaded PDFs, we've done all these things, we've invested all this time and all this learning in how to do these things. And so it tends to get blurry on what we're actually really, really, really good at. And I know that sounds crazy, but trust me, I've lived it and I've seen it and I've coached people through it, that because we can do a lot of things well, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to do all of the things. There are a few things that most of us as humans do exceptionally well. And then there are things that, of course, yeah, we can figure it out, we can do, or maybe we're average at. So as the solopreneur, right, because there's no one else, you do all the things. But as a CEO, we get to focus on what we're great at, and we get to let others do and be what they're great at. Let's start by thinking through what it is that you really, really want to be doing as the CEO of your business. Maybe you're really, really great at strategy, so you want to focus on that, right? For your business or maybe for your clients' businesses. That's where I ended up landing. Maybe you want to speak at events or conferences to share your expertise or to grow your brand's reach. Maybe you're really great at managing people and you want to be the manager of your own growing team. CEOs come in all shapes and sizes, just like businesses. So you don't necessarily have to picture yourself in a corner office with a massive building, to be a CEO, especially nowadays when most of us are working remotely in our home offices or in different spaces outside of a traditional office environment. As the CEO, you get to decide what is the structure of your business. You could decide that you are that CEO who works from home, who checks in on your team once a day, who, has created systems that allow you to communicate, whether that's through Slack or another project management tool. You could be traveling, making new connections, spending your time networking and building your relationships, or traveling and going on vacation with your family. Once you get clear on your zone of genius and what you want to be doing day to day, you'll have a clearer view of where you need more support. For example, if you hate the financial side of the business, if you hate the bookkeeping side, it's time to hire a bookkeeper. If you aren't very good at social media, you might want to hire that out too. So it's really important, when you're at that stage, at that transformational stage, to start to think through and decide not necessarily just what do I want to do, but who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in this company? And so identifying your zone of genius is step 2. Step number 3 is to create a business that supports more people than just you. And this is where systems come into play. One of the hardest things about shifting from solopreneur to CEO is setting up systems that don't just support you. When you start to add people onto your team or bring people into your organization, they're going to need things like standard operating procedures. They're going to need project management tools, team meetings to make sure that everyone is on the same page. If you're still a one-woman show, for example, now is the time to start thinking about all of the ways you can adapt your systems and processes to support a team. So, for example, most of my how-tos and the things that I do in my business, they're in various, or they were, I should say, in various spreadsheets, documents, PowerPoint presentations. And part of what I needed to start doing last year was I used Trello as a project management tool, but I started to create my systems, if you will, my standard operating procedures within Trello as Trello boards, because I knew that I was going to be bringing on team members and different contractors to support me. So I wanted a quick and easy way to give them access to what needed to be done so that it would minimize the training time and that they had a go-to resource and didn't necessarily feel like they had to ask me for questions every step of the way. Now, of course, if you've already made the shift to CEO and have a growing team, for you, it's going to be time to take stock of what's working and what's not so that you can strengthen the systems for future growth. So we know the saying, what got you here won't get you there, right? So even if you are at a place where you've kind of stabilized, don't get lax here. If your goal is to grow, then you need to use this time and use the space to, again, do an audit. What's working? What's not working? What can we get rid of? What ideas do the team members have on systems, on software, on other things that can improve their workflow or their process of getting work done? Sorry, y'all. I am struggling with allergies at this time. So if my voice sounds a little scratchy, it's because of the allergy. So bear with me. We just have a few more tips here. Tip number 4, surround yourself with other female CEOs. Guess what? When we are solopreneurs, right? When we are in the trenches, even if we have a mentor, even if we have a coach, even if we're part of a mastermind, the day-to-day weight of all of the things that we have to do can make us feel like we are in this by ourselves, that no one understands what we're going through, that we're the only ones facing these challenges and these learning curves. And so that's why it's important to obviously surround yourself with other coaches or service providers or other business owners. But at the end of the day, when you've made that transition from solopreneur and service provider to CEO, it is now time for you to level up your circle. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with still, connecting with others who have not made that shift. But if you think about it in the sense of, this transition is going to require different things from you, you want to be surrounded by other individuals who have experienced that or are experiencing that so that you can learn and glean from them. So as it relates to surrounding yourself with other female CEOs, just know that, they can They can run different businesses than you. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of business. Like you, if you're a coach, you don't only necessarily have to connect with other, CEOs who are coaches, and more than likely, quite frankly, if they've transitioned into that CEO space or mindset or identity, they are no longer referring to themselves as coaches. So, just being mindful and being open to learning from other CEOs who are in different spaces, in different business models, different products, different service offerings. Now, at the end of the day, you can be the CEO of your business if it's just you and your VA and you're bringing in $50,000 a year. Nothing wrong with that. You can also be the CEO of your business if you make $500,000 a year and have a team of 10. If you really want to step into the role of CEO, it helps to have other examples of other CEOs, especially women. And again, I would definitely encourage those who have businesses like yours, again, those who have already paved the way, but don't just limit your associations or your connections and relationships with individuals who are just in your space. As I've mentioned previously, we are more powerful together. So, really identifying individuals who you admire, who are a few steps ahead of you, who have done the groundwork to partner with, to connect with, to learn from. And they can have complementary businesses or similar operations. I run an advisory and training firm. And so, you can do a Google search and find tons of other businesses that are similar, others that are run by women. But when you get down to the heart of it, some, specialize in different things that I may not specialize in. And so building those relationships or, not being afraid to connect with the women that are running those businesses could lead to opportunities for partnerships in the future, where we can offer services to a larger organization that me by myself, I wouldn't have been able to attain, or them by themselves. There are a plethora of professional organizations where you can identify these individuals. And shameless plug, She Leads Collective, which will be launching soon. I'll share more details about that. That'll be another place for you to connect with these women and really create, real relationships and partnerships. You can do local meetups. And then lastly, the tip that I would give here around making the transition a little easier from solopreneur to CEO is to really commit to your learning. As you've heard me share many times over, that, this entrepreneurship, being in this space, is a professional development course. And so it requires us to constantly be challenged in what we're learning and how we're growing. And I do believe that, to the extent that we're able to grow, we're able to develop, and we're able to mature as service providers to CEOs, then that is the equivalent to how we're able to impact and serve others. And so as a CEO, it's your responsibility to keep a pulse on what's happening in your industry. So this is where I would encourage you to make time to learn, whether that is through, formal courses, whether that is through reading books, listening to podcasts, whatever that looks like. Just know that your team is depending on you, again, because you're not in the trenches and you're looking ahead. Your team is depending on you while they're doing the work and building the vision, to be the lookout and to know what's coming up. What are some of the pitfalls to avoid? What are some of the opportunities to be prepared for? As you've transitioned from doing, right, naturally, or we're assuming you'll have more time. And so using your newfound CEO time to participate in masterminds, to attend more networking events, whether that's in person or virtual. Just stay ahead of the curve. Because as we know, especially in the environment that we're in and that we've been in the last couple of years, change is happening very, very quickly. And the expectations of business, the expectations of employees is constantly evolving. And so as the CEO, you have to have a pulse on that. Now, of course, you want to surround yourself with individuals on your leadership team who are also on the lookout, who are also planning. But at the end of the day, the responsibility falls on you. The other point that I want to add around this commit to learning is that while we're not focused on doing all of the things, it doesn't hurt to expand and enhance your leadership skills. It doesn't hurt to actually invest in some leadership coaching or leadership training or leadership development. Maybe you want to really, like I mentioned before, expand your brand visibility and your brand reach. So maybe you want to bring on a communications coach or a public speaking coach to help you, really hone in on your message and allow you to get more speaking opportunities. So the main thing here is that, as the CEO, as the person who is driving the vision, you're ensuring that you are developing yourself, that you're using this space, this time that you have to think, that you have to process, that you have to strategize, to identify your areas that need some development and actually investing in it. So to quickly recap, because I know I've given you a lot to think about and a lot to process and chew on, the transition and the transformation that takes place as you move away from solopreneur to CEO is going to require a lot of you personally, just as much as it will in terms of the work that you're doing, because essentially the shift and the transformation that's taking place is you moving from doing to being. And so really quick, just to recap, some of the thoughts here that I have and that I've experienced and I've coached others through around what it takes to make that shift. First and foremost, get clear on your vision. Create the space so that you can identify, what am I doing all this for? What is it that I'm building? For whom? Why? What is the long-term vision? Is it legacy? Is it, just in the meantime? Is this a fun thing to do for right now and in this moment? Get clear on your vision. Next, identify your zone of genius, right? Identify that thing that makes you an asset to the business and allow yourself the space to focus on that and then bring on other individuals to help support you in the execution and then create the systems and the processes that actually support the individuals who are helping you. So whatever that looks like in your business, whatever tools, whatever resources, whatever software that you need to bring in, again, I would invite you to ask your team, what works? What do they need? And then incorporating those as it makes sense. Surround yourself with other CEOs, because again, when we come together, we do powerful things. And that's why I encourage that so much that, when you get to that place, you want to be able to have individuals who know what it is that you're dealing with, who know how to counsel you and can give you advice and strategies that helped them get over whatever humps they had to when they made that transition. Lastly, commit to learning. Being a leader is a lifetime commitment to learning. It's no different when you are stepping into a CEO role or CEO capacity. The shift from solopreneur to CEO, at the core of it, it's shifting your mindset away from doing to being. You're going to have to be willing to, one, fully step into that identity, loosen your hold on the day-to-day operations and trust other people to do their best work. Of course, create the environment and the systems and the processes that allow them to do so. It also means in investing and hiring amazing people, investing in your own growth and development, and accepting and understanding that it's not an instant shift. This is a transformation that can take months or it can take years. It really depends on you and where your focus is. But just know that, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And hopefully the steps that I've shared will help make that transition or that transformation a little easier. But know that every CEO struggles when they first step into that role and that identity. That's why I'm recommending that you build a network and you build relationships with other fellow female CEOs that can help you see all the possibilities out there and available to you to build your business. So with that, if you're listening today and you are in the process of making that shift from solopreneur to CEO, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear, what's happening in your transformation chamber, if you will, how it's going. I would invite you to DM me on Instagram, Sabine Gideon, LinkedIn as well. My handle there is Sabine Gideon. I'd love to hear how that process is going for you, what some of the challenges you're facing, some of the lessons learned, and some of the things that maybe I've shared today that you plan to apply. And then lastly, invitation for you to subscribe to the show and also leave a review or a rating if this episode was helpful for you and you took away some nuggets that you're going to go ahead and apply. Again, with you subscribing, with you rating and leaving reviews, it allows more female CEOs to be able to find the show and to be able to learn and continue to grow their businesses as well. So with that, I will chat with you next week. Until then, have a fabulous week. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. Be sure to join us next week for another transformative discussion to help you grow, develop, and embody the courageous leader you've always been. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get alerts when new episodes drop, and join us for our next Leaders Lounge meetup on Zoom. Details and dates for future sessions are included in the show notes below, so take a look there or head over to SabineGideon.com/lounge to register and hold your spot for the next session. Again, that's SabineGideon.com/lounge to grab your spot. Excited to connect with you all inside the lounge. Talk to you soon.